Will we see a blockbuster Maple Leafs trade this offseason? And NHL insiders reporting that he feels the Big Four likely are going to be broken up this offseason. Plus, what comes next for the Ottawa Senators in an ownership capacity after finding out last night that Eugene Melnyk, the owner of the Sens, has passed away. Plus, we also have some updates regarding the NHL GM meetings and different topics they're discussing. We have injury updates and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and rumors to discuss here today. First up, we have a couple quick items, including a signing in Minnesota. They've signed center iceman Sam Hentges, who was a 2018 7th-round selection who played 4 years at St. Cloud State. He's 22 years old. He's now officially done the college hockey scene and has signed his entry-level contract here with Minnesota, so he makes the jump. And we also got word today that Nathan MacKinnon is going to be out for the Avalanche tonight, and he could be out for a potential extended time. I mean, that would be a major blow for the Avalanche, who are already without captain Gabriel Landeskog, but Landeskog is expected to be back in time for the, maybe not game one, but early in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Nathan MacKinnon is believed to have suffered an injury versus the Dallas Stars when he engaged in a fight. Obviously MacKinnon's shown certainly a little bit more of a feistier side this season. Certainly being more involved with the rough stuff, which is not entirely bad, but you certainly don't want your star players going down with injury because of a scenario like this. I know there's a difference of opinion out there. Some don't want to see guys like this fighting because of the injury risk, and some are all for it because it's really showing, in some cases at least, good leadership, stepping up for your teammates, etc. But I don't know. Hopefully this isn't going to lead to anything too significant, but there is concerns that it could be serious, and we won't really know probably further evaluation on that injury for the next day or two. We got several more updates from the NHL general managers meetings taking place in Florida today from all the NHL insiders down covering the event. We got confirmation now. We now have 100% confirmed that the NHL is raising the salary cap next year by $1 million. The last reports we had at the beginning of the meetings was that it was still expected to go up, but now they were told today that 100% is going up. Looks like revenue is pretty close to with the projection. We don't know exactly where it falls, but the commissioner, Gary Bettman, did indicate that based on the current projections of the revenue that's coming in this year, what they expect over the next few years, that the $1 billion debt that's owed to the owners by the players due to the pandemic is going to be expected to be paid by the end of the 24-25 season. So, of course, right now we're in 21-22. This fall coming up is 22-23. So that's 22-23, 23-24, 24-25. So another 3 seasons beyond the current season. So at that point in 25-26 would be the first season once that debt is paid, assuming everything goes to plan. That's when we could likely see a significant salary cap increase. Obviously, at that point, things would change drastically if everything goes well with the league, and as they predict and project it will over the next 3 years. But that's a long time of probably only getting, say, $1 million or so increases in salary cap each year, which is why we're talking about some of the other things we're going to touch on later in the video, like the potential Leafs trade that Chris Johnson was talking about here recently as well. Now, of course, a few other updates from that meeting. We also got some updates on the World Cup of Hockey. The 2024 World Cup will not have any gimmick teams. Like the last time we saw a World Cup of Hockey, we saw Team North America, which was all the young stars. We saw Team Europe, which is basically all the European countries that basically didn't have enough players to formulate their own full roster. Those gimmick teams are not going to be included. It's only going to be your basic country on country, the more standard approach, very similar to what you'd see at the Olympics. So certainly, that's kind of good to hear, to be honest. I personally wasn't a fan of those teams. I mean, I guess completely, like in that kind of event, I just don't see it where it's meant to be country on country. I wasn't a fan of it myself. If they wanted to create some kind of other special event or do something like that at an all-star game or something like that, that would be fine. But it just, to me, wasn't the right place or format that really interested me, at least as a fan. Now, of course, we got some pretty shocking news late last night. There was a video on the channel discussing the scenario in case you haven't had time to get caught up or missed it here. But the Ottawa Senators owner, Eugene Melnyk, has unfortunately passed away at the young age of 62 years of age. Now, we've known for the last probably, I think, about 7 years that his health wasn't the greatest. He did require a liver transplant, and he did come close to passing away during that battle, and he was able to get himself a liver transplant just a matter of days before doctors thought he may not make it anymore. He was, in major, really bad shape, and things just worked out at almost the 11th hour to get him a new liver and, buy him some time here and a new lease on life. And really ever since then, after the recovery from that, things have appeared to be pretty decent. We really didn't hear much about his failing health as of late, but we know that based on the statement that was released that he was battling some sort of illness. We don't know the full details as to what it was. Unfortunately, it did, win the battle, and Eugene Melnyk is not with us anymore, like I said, at the young age of 62 years of age. So I know that he was one of those kind of guys with the Senators fans, and I could let myself into this as well, as not really enamored with a lot of the business decisions that the man made. But at the end of the day, he did make a lot of good things happen in the city of Ottawa, including saving the team from bankruptcy when former owner Rob Brydon was in bankruptcy and needed to sell the team. There was a lot of interest in the Ottawa Senators. There wasn't a lot of interest to keep it in Ottawa, and Melnyk came along, was probably the only one that was willing to do that, and rescued it, saved the Senators, kept them in Ottawa. Over time, things kind of changed with the fans, and say what you want, but there's lots of good that did come from him being the owner. Now, it's believed at this point, and I guess we'll probably find out more in the coming days here, but Bruce Garriock, who's a very well in tune to the team, has had numerous conversations with the owner over the years, is reporting that he was told, and this was as much as 5, 6, 7 years ago, so things could always change, that he had things set up as a succession plan, that it would remain in his family for generations to come. So he has 2 young daughters that are in their fairly early 20s, Anna and Olivia. It's believed that they do have interest to maintain interest in the team. I don't know to what extent. I know one of them is, I believe it's Olivia, that's going through business school right now. So apparently she's interned in a lot of different departments, learning a lot of different parts of the business in the recent past years. So I think there is interest, but we'll see. There are some that are convinced that it doesn't make sense for the family to maintain a controlling interest. So we don't know what's going to happen here. Will the Melnyk family continue to hold ownership? Can they, can they run the business, or do they need to be able to sell? Maybe they maintain like a minority stake and they sell a majority stake. I don't know, but I've seen reports from some local Ottawa people today indicating that, which we've heard rumblings of before, there is multiple groups that some of them have, which have former NHL players linked to them, and some, I guess like a consortium of investors that would be very interested and have attempted to buy the Senators before, and it's never quite worked out. So I am sure that things will probably, heat up in that regard, but a couple of things to keep in mind. Nothing's going to happen super quick. For one, I hope everybody will kind of give his girls time to grieve and time to get through everything here, with handling his passing. I mean, it's a lot of work. The bigger your estate is, the more it is to handle. Unfortunately, I've been involved with handling some past relatives' estates, and it's not an easy process. It's not a quick process. So there's lots going on that way. And secondly, there is an outstanding lawsuit. Some of you may remember here. I believe it's from, I think it's called Trinity Group, which is the development company in the Senators area in Ottawa, that is scheduled to only go before the courts in September. And a lot of that has to do with the, I guess the whole arena situation downtown. And there's a big fiasco that way that hasn't been made its way through the courts yet. So I don't think anybody's going to want to buy the Senators until they kind of have an outcome and idea on how that's going to work out, because that could certainly have a big impact on the team's finances and what have you, right? So obviously this team is needing a new arena. This team could use an infusion of, new, relationships with ownership, since the strain that's been on it between Melnyk and the fans have been for a number of years now. I would hope that whether it's Eugene's daughters or anybody else who buys the team, that one of the first things they do is mend some relationships with former players and alumni, especially Daniel Alfredsson, who's come and gone numerous times. And I know that guys like Alfredsson, Chris Phillips have been heavily rumored to be, interested in being involved in an ownership capacity with some of these groups. So I guess it's going to be an interesting time. Word is that from a day-to-day business perspective that everything's fine. There's nothing to worry about. Everything will just kind of keep trucking along. I would think this will have an impact on business operations and Pierre Dorion. If, obviously, Eugene Melnyk was a big believer in his, and obviously the selling of their idea around the rebuild and everything like that. So, I know it's early, and some people think it's too early to talk about this stuff, but when it comes to the team, they're directly impacted immediately due to the unfortunate death of the owner. So we'll see where things go. We're probably going to learn a lot here in the coming days, but it's going to be a very interesting time in Ottawa to see how things are handled and, I guess what comes next for them on a variety of levels between the community and ownership, arena, and how this team moves forward without Eugene being involved. I know they've all kind of talked a lot today that he unfortunately won't be there, into the future when the team, hopefully hits the higher levels of success, hopefully brings the Stanley Cup someday, which he was so passionate about. Say what you want about the man. I obviously wasn't a fan of a lot of his business decisions. I've been very vocal on the channel about that, but I will give him credit. Like, he is one of the biggest hockey fans you'll ever know. And obviously, he had an extreme passion for wanting to win and wanting to be the best. And, at the end of the day, we're all people. And I hope that the team can fulfill his wishes. And I hope that, we're able to see the team move on in a positive way here, even though he's not going to be involved any longer. Now, the other big topic I want to talk about here today is the Maple Leafs. Now, this information comes from Chris Johnston. Now, before we get into the topic here at hand and get into the full meat and potatoes of it, I don't want anybody to think that this is an actual trade rumor per se. This is an NHL insider's opinion, I guess an educated opinion based on what knowledge he has, but he did not say that he has information to suggest that they're actively looking to do this offseason. But he believes, and he said this on TSN Radio on Overdrive, that it's his belief that regardless of what happens this offseason or this playoff season, that the Maple Leafs will make a deal and break up the Big Four this offseason, mostly due to salary cap constraints, and it's just going to be too difficult. Now, if you take a look at the Big Four, that's obviously Austin Matthews, John Tavares, Mitchell Marner, and William Nylander. Now, of course, John Tavares has a full no-move clause that was granted to him in his free agent contract he signed when he came over from the Islanders. He's going nowheres unless he would have to waive, and I just don't see why he would do that. So next up, you got Matthews, Marner, and Nylander. I think it's fair to say Matthews obviously makes the most money, and as much as they're all great players, I mean, Matthews is a center, soon to be 50-goal scorer. I think it's fair to say that Austin Matthews is the best player of that trio. Marner and Nylander are very good in their own right, but they're very different kinds of players as well. And I don't see Austin Matthews being traded by the Maple Leafs. Will he be a Leaf his whole career? That's up for debate. I'm not really sure. But for right now, I see absolutely no reason to suggest he would be traded. Now, when it comes to breaking up the Big Four, then, that really leaves us with 2 out of 4. Either Marner or Nylander. I mean, clearly Mitchell Marner's contract has 1 more year than William Nylander. He also makes more money. So Marner's obviously making, around $11 million. He has 3 years left. Nylander's got 2 more years at 6.9. Now, neither player has any trade protection in their contract. They did not qualify yet for that upon negotiating these deals. They will be able to have them in their next contracts, and I'm sure they'll likely want a full no-move clause or no trade to some extent, whether that contract comes from Toronto or elsewhere. Now, statistically speaking, they're both having solid years. It's fair to say William Nylander's been in a slump here as of late. Sheldon Keefe, the head coach, has called him out. And we'll see what happens with the rest of his regular season. But like last year, even though the Leafs struggled and lost in the first round, you could say William Nylander might have been their best forward, or he was right up there. Certainly had a solid playoff campaign. And when he's engaged, he's certainly a very effective forward who can produce a lot of goals and assists and really be very helpful to the team. But of course, that's the problem with Nylander. Every once in a while, he seems to lose that engagement for whatever reason. Now, of course, if you look at these two contracts, I think there's a lot of teams would love to have either player. Given the vast difference in what they're earning, though, Nylander's contract is a lot easier to swallow from a salary cap perspective. Just shy of $7 million, that's hard enough for most teams, let alone $11 million for Marner. Now, which player would probably have more interest? I don't know. I think, to be honest, you could say that Marner's a little bit more dynamic. It might even generate a little bit more interest, but it's just going to prove to be extremely difficult to do. I can imagine if Kyle Dubas decides he has to pull the trigger on a deal like that to be able to get more flexibility to round out his team better, then I don't see a scenario where he retains any salary. And I don't see Marner going anywhere without retained salary. So to me, William Nylander by far is a much more likely player to get traded. If you look at their statistics, Marner is ahead of Nylander in a lot of areas, but if you look at what you get with Nylander, he's not that far off from being a point per game player. In a regular season of 82 games, to get 70, 75 points, certainly doable based on the skill set of Nylander and how he's played recently. So from that perspective, who wouldn't like to have a winger who can produce that kind of level of offense for you, right? So certainly Nylander at that $6.9 million could be a lot more attractive than a Mitchell Marner at $11 million. Now, when it comes to Nylander, where could he go? Well, it's really difficult to say. Like I said, neither player have any trade protection, so it's not really up to them where they want to go per se. If you look to a lot of the teams that have big prospect pools and are on their way up out of a rebuild that could add an extra player, those are the more likely teams that I think would want to jump on board for a significant trade. So you're looking at teams like the LA Kings, you're looking at maybe Detroit, Buffalo, Ottawa, Montreal. Well, Montreal's actually got their own cap issues as it is, even though they're going to start a rebuild. Until they kind of go through probably a solid year of that, they're not going to have the cap flexibility, so I don't see that really working out. So you can probably shake them off the list here. New Jersey might be a possibility. A team like the Islanders need a player like both of them. I don't know that they would have the assets, though. That might be the issue in that regard. The Islanders aren't rebuilding, of course, but they certainly could use and really need another dynamic forward, and there's certainly a need there. I just don't know that they'd satisfy what the Leafs would want in return. So that would be, very tricky for them to pull off. But, certainly that. Then, of course, you got Seattle, a brand new team with lots of cap space, lots of draft picks. Certainly need to build up their team to be able to score more. Certainly a big need in that regard here as well. I mean, Chris Johnson did not speculate anywhere over Mitchell Marner versus William Nylander. Where could they go? That was not part of it. He basically just kind of said, and I found it very interesting, so I want to talk about it here ahead of the offseason, that he believes, in his own opinion, that the Maple Leafs are going to have no choice but to break up the big four and see one of them go. So I thought, well, let's analyze this and see what's most likely scenario to take place. And to me, a Nylander deal, to me, is the easiest and most likely scenario with a number of teams out there that have the cap space and, deep prospect pools or deep draft currency to pick from. It makes the most sense to me that could happen. Now, could Marner be the move? It could be, but again, like I stressed, the only way that happens is maybe if there's a team out there that has, another player that maybe they want to swap for Marner that could be heavily involved that might make, 6, 7, 8 million, then maybe we see a swapping of that because that's still a big savings. If the Leafs trade Marner for a player that's making, say, 6 or 7 million, well, they're going to get back, say, $4 million in cap space. Maybe that other team tacks on some picks and prospects or something. That's just a mock scenario. I don't really have something in mind per se that comes to mind. But that's something that we could see, right? So it's not a complete rule out here that Marner's the guy that goes. But I just think that given the contract status of each player, that Nylander would be the much more interesting player in this regard. Now, I do honestly think that the playoffs will have an impact. If we see another first-round loss, I think Johnson absolutely is right, and we will see this because I don't really see how they have a choice because at this point, they have to understand that it would be really more about roster construction being the issue of why they're not getting over that hump. But if they do have playoff success and they win, say, at least a couple of rounds, even if they don't win the cup but they come close, to me, I don't know that they're really going to want to do that. I think they're going to try to tweak again and continue to go at it, but we'll see. I mean, with these $1 million increases for the next 3 years, and you've got some of these younger players that need spots, like they're going to want to work in Matthew Nyes and Nick Robertson to bigger roles. Maybe we don't see guys like Spezza and Simmons continue on much longer with the club. They transition to a younger, different kind of group here with the bottom six. I don't know. I mean, we might see some different scenarios unfold here with the Leafs. They're going to have their goaltending situation to address. Maybe Mrazek goes. They find a way to get that money over to Campbell, depending on what Campbell needs for a new contract. So it's going to be really interesting times. There's no doubt. Obviously, like I said, I do think their playoff success will have an impact where CJ says he doesn't think it will. He sees a Big Four breakup happening pretty much regardless. So let me know what your thoughts on that situation would be. Who's most likely to go? Where could they end up? What kind of return could they be looking at? Give me all your thoughts in the comments and we'll talk about it further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.